Piston Peak, the brand new Cars area coming to Magic Kingdom, is moving fast, and I can't wait for it to open. Hello everybody, welcome. We've got a brand new layout of this area based on construction details, an update on the off-road rally race, the new kids attraction, and more. Almost 2 years ago, Disney held their D23 Expo in Anaheim, California, where they floored everybody with a surprise announcement about the brand new Cars area coming to Magic Kingdom. And this was an announcement that nobody saw coming. Now, what was sure to be a big hit for Disney during this expo ended up being a bit controversial. While some heralded this as a massive improvement for Magic Kingdom, other fans condemned Disney, calling out their complete disregard and destruction of the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island, which was part of Walt Disney's original vision for Frontierland. While most people agreed that the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island specifically were not really highly visited or popular attractions by any stretch of the imagination, most people still feel like that area added to a lot of the beauty of the park. The waterway and all the natural features really just added to the beauty of that area. And the way that area made you feel just really couldn't be overstated. Shocked by this backlash, Disney went right to work to figure out how can they bring forward some sort of new vision, new way of showcasing what they have planned that might help alleviate some fans' fears. So they created this new version of their concept art in a fun map style design, which they've used in a lot of different places in the past. And on this concept art, you can see the water has been amped up big time. And moreover, the theme of this concept art really showcases how it fits in much better with Frontierland than the previous version that we received. Now, I created my own version of a real-world sort of picture of this area with that fun map style Piston Peak layered on top of it. And if you analyze this fun map concept art style, I do think it actually brings a lot of positive things forward that people were a little bit worried about in the past. And it's got some really fun, cool things in it, a little bit of Easter eggs, additional details, like you can see the bridges over there by the waterway that they've amped up. You can kind of see how it looks like the existing bridges that sit along Rivers of America today are going to be kept intact. And then if you look closely in sort of the center map near that sort of kids flat ride attraction that they're going to be building, you can even see some additional bridges and what looks to me like a barrel bridge. And if you know anything about Tom Sawyer Island, there was an awesome barrel bridge that took you from one part of the island to another part of the island, and it was always a lot of fun. So I feel like this is like a little Easter egg of them being able to bring in that barrel bridge into this to pay homage to Tom Sawyer Island. The color, the style, the trees, everything about this fun map art style does fit a lot better with Frontierland. Now, I've been out at the site many times, watching all the construction progress, and I wanted to create a more detailed mapping of where things are going to be in this park. Combine some of the concept art and the fun map style and some of the construction visuals that I'm seeing while I'm out there and create a more detailed layout of the land and specifically the rally race itself. So let's go ahead and pull up this new map, and right off the bat you can see where the water fits into it. I've left the original Rivers of America into this layout. And so what you're seeing here is where the rivers, the water will be kept versus where it will be filled in with the new Piston Peak area. And this waterway really excites me. It's probably one of the most exciting things for this land for me because I love the way the water makes that area feel. And I just love that there is this sort of strip of water, almost a river, if you will, that almost surrounds about half to 3/4 of Piston Peak and almost makes it an island unto itself. And it really showcases how they thought about bringing this in without destroying the visuals entirely. Now, obviously, they've drained all the water right now while they are doing construction on the area, but the expectation is they will then fill that water back in and we'll actually have a nice stream running through there with some new trees and some mountainous type terrain on the other side of it, which I think will look pretty cool. I'm really hopeful that based on where this is going and what I'm seeing so far, I really feel like this might turn out okay. And I was one of the most skeptical people right out of the bat because I loved Rivers of America and the way it made everything feel. So I was a little bit concerned about this when it was first announced. The original concept art really didn't do it any justice, and the new fun map art style I feel like made things quite a bit better for me. And now that I'm mapping this out on my own and sort of doing detailed layouts of the area based on what I'm seeing in the construction as well, I'm starting to get a little bit more excited about this. As far as where you'll enter to get into Piston Peak, I've got two potential entry points here, one over sort of by the Haunted Mansion and then one over there by Big Thunder Mountain. And those are the only 2 points of entry, if you will, sort of that upper arc along that visual where you'll be able to get into Cars Land. So everything else below that, that entire lower 2/3 of the land will be separated by this river. So if you look right there beyond Liberty Square by the Haunted Mansion, you can see it up in the top right-hand corner there, Haunted Mansion. You follow that down around to the right towards Liberty Square a little bit, you'll see the existing queue for Haunted Mansion, which they are doing work on and expanding. But there's a building structure there, basically the keelboat docks that have been using as overflow for the Haunted Mansion queue in the past. That right now is currently being added to their construction, and they're going to be removing that, and that is where the primary entry point from Liberty Square will be for the cars area. And that pathway will essentially arc all the way around over to Frontierland. So there will be a separation point between the entrance as you go in and you start to follow that path upward. There will be some trees and things that will basically create a barrier between the cars walkway area and the Haunted Mansion. So you won't be able to see from inside the Haunted Mansion into Cars Land. Now, the only thing you don't really have there is water. So it will be a barrier of basically trees and shrubs, and maybe even a wall that gets erected. But as you sort of follow that track around towards the top there, you'll see that I have an entrance there for Villains Land. All of this will basically be concrete here with a bunch of trees and things woven through it. And there will be an entrance that goes vertically up to the top there that leads you into Villains Land. So I've said this before, in order to do Villains Land, they had to do Cars Land because that's basically going to be the main point of entry for Villains Land. Now, if we follow that back over to the left, this is now going to connect that pathway over to Frontierland, which I think is the other entrance. And that basically lets out right there near the exit of Big Thunder Mountain today and a little bit near the docks that used to take you over to Tom Sawyer Island. This is where you can see the water starts back up again. So that top third of the graphic is all sort of concrete pathways, and then the bottom 2/3 is all water and river. Now, right there in the center of all those paths and all those walkways there, you see something I've got there called the Kids Ride. This is kind of a little island almost inside of the pathway area of Cars Land, where there is a building, a structure, and this is where the kids attraction is going to be. Obviously, adults will be able to participate in this attraction as well, but I'm just referring to it as more of a less intense kind of fun type flat ride that's going to exist here. Now, Disney hasn't given us really any details on this attraction other than what we can see in the concept art. And based on what I'm seeing, this attraction looks very similar to Mater's Junkyard Jamboree or Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters. Those are two flat rides that exist in Disneyland in the Radiator Springs area, the Cars area at Disney's California Adventure. And they're both very similar attractions where you get into a vehicle and it sort of like spins around. It's not really controlled by you. It's not bumper cars. It kind of looks like bumper cars, but it's not. It's basically just kind of a ride that kind of spins around, rotates around an area, and it's a lot of fun. Mater's Junkyard Jamboree is kind of similar to Aliens, swirling saucers over there in the Toy Story Land area. And based on the visuals that I'm seeing with these sort of tractors and vehicles, it looks very similar to this Junkyard Jamboree. So I'm expecting an attraction very similar to one of those, which I think will be really cool. However, that building is fairly large, and you really wouldn't need a queue, like a massive queue for an attraction like that. And so I'm also suspecting that this building is also going to be doubling as concessions, some sort of food, kiosks of some kind, where you can get maybe some merchandise and some food, because there really isn't a lot of that anywhere else in the concept art for Cars Land. And it's a decent sized building and space with a few bridges connecting it, almost like a little island. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to be there. But then right across from that, you see the entrance to this sort of off-road rally space. Now, most of the Piston Peak area is going to be comprised of this off-road rally attraction. That means that this Piston Peak is going to be very different from Radiator Springs. Radiator Springs has tons of merchandise, tons of restaurants, tons of just ambiance that's built into the land that makes you feel like you're in this car's area. There's not nearly as much theming or space for any of these sort of kiosks and booths and restaurants and shops in this area. A lot of it is natural beauty, like trees and rock work and caves and mountains and things, which makes sense because it is Piston Peak. It's meant to be sort of almost blending in with Frontierland, and it's meant to be more like outdoor. Now, the off-road rally race itself is speculated to be very similar to the Radiator Springs Racers and the test track attractions on a physical track. However, instead of race cars, you will be on these sort of like 4x4 four-wheeling trucks. You can see that, you can see those vehicles in the concept art. A lot of people have been saying it's going to be a trackless attraction and it's going to be on like real dirt environment. I don't think we're going to get any of that. I've said this before. They did a video for D23 where they kind of showed how they were concepting and thinking about the track itself. But my belief is that was really to kind of get a feel for what a layout of the track might be and an idea of how it might feel while you're actually on the attraction. These vehicles will have struts on them, it looks like, and tires that'll enable the car to sort of bounce up and down as it's hitting different obstacles like logs and bridges and things that along the way, rougher terrain than what you're going to get on a smooth surface like Radiator Springs Racers or Test Track. So it's a combination of like Test Track, but also with the ability to sort of get some like bumpiness with those vehicles and those shocks as you're going over different obstacles. Now, the queue itself that you enter into is this sort of like A-frame type lodge, which I think looks really nice, and it fits in perfectly with the theme of the wilderness and Piston Peak. This is where we're going to be entering into the queue, and I've tried to basically showcase the layout of the actual attraction itself. My expectation is you're going to head into this queue and head towards the back of the A-frame lodge itself, where you'll actually load and unload. I think there will be some sort of pre-show in this attraction, most likely where you're going to see Ranger Autobahn there as part of the introduction to the attraction. This is a new character that they've basically sort of created based on another character that they had in classic Disney cartoons. It went all the way back to like 1954. So it's basically a newer take on this character. But I'm expecting him to be involved in some way in a pre-show element. But once you actually load onto the track, from what I can see, you're going to head off to the right side there of the attraction, around the right side of that lodge, and this is where you're going to be your starting point. And this is a straightaway type start. Now, this is not like Radiator Springs or Test Track where you're sort of kind of like easing into it. If you've ever ridden Radiator Springs Racers, it's kind of like a leisurely stroll with some little bit of music playing in the beginning, and you're going around these curves and it's kind of chill, and then eventually you get into sort of this racing. I think this attraction right out of the gate, there's a starting line. It's going to be almost like a race right off the bat, but a very bumpy, crazy off-road race. And there's a straightaway section there. It's going to take you right into your first set of turns. And these quick turns that you head up into in this next section is like a winding dirt road across some wooden bridges. Expect some bumpy elements here, which then heads directly into what I'm just referring to as Snowfall Mountains. In the concept art, you can see this like snowy hilltop mountainous type terrain right here with some caves that you're going to be entering into, heading up into the top of the mountains. So it's all sort of dirt roads and mud and trees at the bottom. And then as you get into the cave and you weave your way towards the top of the mountain, you're going to come out where it's all snow-covered, snow-capped type mountains, just like if you were going from the bottom to a top of a real mountain. You can see the path sort of zigzags down into that cave, does like a little sort of like U-turn up there, and you'll eventually exit out of the caves and you'll be at the top of the mountain. And from this point, you're basically heading now down the mountain into what I'm referring to as the mud run. There's lots of water and mud elements showcased in the concept art. This definitely looks to me like a water feature that we're going to have to drive through. It doesn't look like water that's along the sides. It looks like we will really actually go through some sort of water feature. And we might even get wet on this ride, which I think could be pretty cool. It doesn't look too curvy in this section, so I'm not expecting any like drifting elements in the mud run, which I think could have been really neat. If you think about like Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift, or even like Cosmic Rewind, where sort of the vehicle sort of angles, you know, shifts left and right. It's able to spin. Could have been a cool element, I think, there in the mud run. If you were kind of going around some turns, you might even get some like drifting feel like you would in real life if you were sort of mud running with a four-wheeler. I don't see that anywhere in the concept art, but hey, maybe they'll surprise us and this new sort of test track type vehicle will have the ability to actually spin and drift like that. That could be really cool, but for now it does kind of look more like a straightaway. So I think the most we might get here is just getting a little wet. From here, we're going to be heading into what I call the rock caves. No snow here. It's just more like cavernous, rocky area. I'm thinking some sort of underground passage here with some crystals or some rock formations, a little bit similar to maybe some of the rocky indoor areas of Radiator Springs Racers. And when we exit these underground caverns, we are going to head into the hot springs area. This looks to me like a steep downhill run into the hot springs. And what I love about this is these hot springs are sort of like rainbow colored. If you look at the fun map style art, which is very reminiscent of the grand prismatic springs that exist in Yellowstone National Park. This is a real world phenomenon. The colors basically changed based on the bacteria levels and things, and towards the center it's too hot, so there is no bacteria, and so the color it's got this sort of rainbow pattern in these hot springs, and this is a real world phenomenon that I feel like is really cool that they brought in. So you can kind of almost feel like Piston Peak has some elements of Yellowstone National Park to the way that they've designed this. I'm also expecting some like geysers to be erupting, maybe even getting wet from those elements as well. But this is pretty much the end of all the cool elements. There is now sort of another straightaway. You can kind of follow the path down towards the finish area. You've got one last straightaway there with some bumpy like log elements, a tunnel, then one last sort of like circular wrap type element that will then lead you into the finish line and ultimately the unloading station. And again, this is sort of a race type element. There's a defined start, there is a finish line. We don't have any details on whether there will be a side-by-side racing element like Radiator Springs Racers, possibly. I'm assuming that Park Ranger Autobahn will be somewhere along the finish line once again, so he's in the pre-show, maybe he's at the start line, maybe he's at the finish line as well. But overall, I'm really digging this layout. Now, of course, the layout of the actual attraction itself isn't going to be perfect. I'm basing this on the concept art, which could change. It could be a little bit different from what you can see there. But based on that, I tried to map out the race as best I could. But I have to say, overall, I'm very encouraged because once I started getting into this myself and really trying to map things out at a detailed level, it was giving me a better idea of what this is really going to look like and how is it going to fit in Frontierland and Liberty Square area. Is it going to detract massively? I've really been worried about the sound lines and the sight lines and hearing cars attraction goes flying by while I'm kind of just peacefully trying to enjoy my walk down Frontierland. I'm feeling like it's actually pretty solid given this sort of waterway that's going to separate the area along Frontierland and these mountainous type terrain and the style of the terrain and lots of trees that are going to be sort of adorning all of the different edges of the property. I'm starting to get, I feel like it's going to be pretty cool, actually. I feel like it might end up being better than Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island, which I'm going to be totally transparent. I never thought I would say that. I feel like I've been saying from the beginning, I don't think it's gonna be great. But now that I'm getting into this and mapping it out, I don't know. It could end up being cool. We'll see. So I'd love to hear what you think. Be sure to let me know down in the comments. Are you feeling like I'm feeling? Are you starting getting a little bit of hope now? Or are you still feeling like, no, that was a massive mistake and they shouldn't be building this? I don't know. I'd just love to hear from you down in the comments. Let me know what you think. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this content. And once again, thank you so much for watching. So I see you next time. The noble way is the easy way. Bye-bye, everybody.